if this one doesn't blow your socks off, I don't know what's going to. You are literally solving the biggest problem that I had.
That's a huge gap that's going to create a problem in production.
I just want to mic drop that and be like, okay, we're done. What if I have a small millwork shop and I'm looking to hire an internal engineer? Okay, everybody, welcome to another awesome episode on the shop floor. I've got Jacob here with me today, and if this one doesn't blow your socks off, I don't know what's going to. So, Jacob, if you could tell us, well, God, I didn't even know I'm so excited right now, I didn't even know where to start, because you are literally solving the biggest problem that I had, and I did commercial millwork and woodworking for like 25 years. You are solving the biggest problem that we have. So can you just give us a quick intro, like who you are, what you do, why did you do it? And if you get that far, I'll ask you some more questions.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks, Brad. I'm excited as well. My name is Jacob Edmond. I'm CEO of Ductworks. And we help customers eliminate their drafting and design bottlenecks. And so what that looks like is generally we help customers in the millwork industry is where we focus. And we help you with your CAD, microvoam, cabinet vision, Revit, shop drawings, and design drawings. And so where this started, how it all started, I spent a little over a decade working in a handful of millwork shops across the U.S., and in engineering. I was an engineer myself for many years and managing engineering departments. And like you said, this was always a problem for us, was the engineering bottleneck, was how do we get work through to the shop floor faster? And so every owner that I worked for and every client that I work with still today has a version of this problem where it's, hey, I have shop capacity and I have work that I can sell or I have sold, but it's sitting in some way in drafting or design or engineering. And so that's really what we help eliminate with our clients. And so the way that we do that is we partner with them to be there, one, when there's peaks in sales and volume. Hey, we just sold a huge job that needs to get submitted in 2 weeks, but it's more than my internal team has the capacity to pump through in that time. Or on a full-time basis, we're there as consistent partners and doing it in a way, like I said, in microvoam or cabinet vision and the software that they work in, so they're not redoing our work. And so I myself had this problem, and I had tried working internally to solve it. I remember one time I wrote a letter to my boss at the time and said, hey, we're not going to outsource drawings anymore, and here's why we're not going to do it, and here's how I'm going to solve it. And I didn't. I still couldn't figure out how to handle all of the fluctuations in capacity with my own staff internally. It's like we've talked about many, many times. This industry is cyclical, and so how do you handle those peaks and staff for the valleys internally? And that's what outsourcing allows you to do. We do it in every other part of our business, with install, with manufacturing and production. And so drafting and design is really the hardest part to do that.
Man, I'm smiling from ear to ear, because I can think of 10 people off the top of my head that are going to go crazy when they hear this podcast in terms of there's a solution for it. Now, I mean, I know from experience that these, your engineers are typically, they're not the lowest paid people in your organization. Mm-hmm. So when you have a big push for orders, like, you're really just taking your best people and stressing them out to the max.
Right.
Now, they're also the people that need to do perfect work. So
Okay.
how often are you stressed out to the max and doing perfect work at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'd say is most companies out there, they're never doing perfect work, but they don't realize it, right? And so it's funny because you're a lean guy, right? And you understand the idea of quality control and the idea of, how do we create a process, a repeatable process to get consistent results. But for some reason in woodworking, when it comes to engineering, every business you go into, it's like, well, there's Jim in the corner and he's our most senior engineer and nobody checks his work and we just trust that it's right. And when it's not, we take it back to Jim to fix it, right? But that's what we rely on. That's all we know how to do. And nobody has really figured out one, that's not a sustainable process. It's not a sustainable plan is to rely on a single person. But two is Jim also continues to get piled more and more work on him. Generally engineers are kind of the most technical people, most tech savvy people in a business. A lot of times they kind of become, especially for smaller shops, your de facto IT person, but they also end up becoming
so true. I'm
right?
like, I'm doing that to my guy right now.
Yeah, they become your kind of your IT. They also become tech support. They become, a lot of times they get piled on them stuff that's really project management or really other departments, right? And so, like you mentioned, a lot of times they're a high dollar, a high cost person in your organization, and they are the only person in your organization that can do just a select few tasks. But they end up spending so much of their time doing a bunch of other stuff that other people could and should do. So that's generally the first place that we start and try to help is how can we offload from your engineer tasks so that they can spend as much of their time doing the things that only they can do, which is keeping your shop floor busy, especially the really complex stuff. And so what we usually find when I start working with clients is, it starts with an owner or somebody in there saying, hey, I have this huge job, the biggest job we've ever won. I have an opportunity to go get this job, but my shop has capacity to take it, but I know I can't get it through engineering and I can't take my engineer off what he's doing now to get the shop drawings done. And so that's usually the first place we start, because if you think about the engineering and drafting life cycle, there's kind of two main phases of drafting and engineering for every project. Is you've got the upfront design, drafting, submittal part, right? Hey, we're going to draw what we're going to build to send it for approval. And then there's a gap from that point to when it gets approved and to when you get field measurements and when you're ready to go, they say, okay, now we're going to send this, fully engineer it, program machines, whatever your process is to send to production. And that can be anywhere from, days to months for a large commercial project, right? And so you have that going with many projects in your business at any given time. And what a lot of times happens, especially in smaller shops, is your engineer might spend 2-3 weeks doing submittals. And that whole time, he's not sending anything to your production, right? So your guy is spending 2-3 weeks, a lot of times doing submittals for a large project. And that whole time, nothing new is getting released to feed your shop floor. So if you're if you're a lean shop and you're kind of, hey, pulling work as soon as that packet hits the shop floor, you're cutting it, you're moving it. That's a huge gap that's going to create a problem in production. But also for your engineer, that's a huge gap where he's doing a different set of processes, and then he's going to go back and say, okay, now I'm going to go back to a project that I haven't touched in 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. And now I'm going to try to remember what all the details of it, and let me engineer it and incorporate field dimensions, check for red lines, make sure I've got material approvals, and then let me get this to the shop floor. And they do that constantly back and forth. It's very inefficient. And it creates, you see those back and forth ebb and flows in your production output, right? And so that's usually the first thing we try to solve is let's separate those things into the two disparate processes they are and have dedicated resources that allow you to keep both consistently flowing. So the first thing we try to do is let me offload all that upfront drafting work. Let us take care of that at Duckworks for you. We will make sure that I've got 70 plus people sitting in an office that no matter how big your job is, no matter how fast it needs to go, we can handle it. Let me take care of that. And then let's let your engineer focus on keeping a consistent flow to your shop. Let's start there.
I just want to mic drop that and be like, okay, we're done. So, you have 70 people, you said? And so I can drop $1 million project on you. You divide that up and get it back to me in some time that is not even imaginable for my engineer to pull off in terms of a shop drawings.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it and usually that's the first problem that customers encounter is, okay, well, I'm a $5 million a year shop. I'm $1 million a year shop, whatever it is. I don't have enough engineers sitting around to do $1 million job in 2 weeks. But that doesn't stop the GC from telling you, well, I'll give you this contract, but I need shop drawings in 2 weeks, right?
Got it.
And so that's the first part is like, okay, let's solve that problem, but let's also do it in a way that's smart. Like, let's organize the job, how you're going to produce it. If it's multiple floors, are they going to do it top down? Are they going to do wet areas? Whatever it is, let's organize up front and take the time to do that to where it's grouped by the way you're going to feed your shop. And so and that leads us into kind of the second thing we help our clients with that I find so often is, so many shops are still, from a drafting and engineering perspective, organizing their projects as just the whole thing. And so as a lean guy, as a one-piece flow guy, that sounds insane, right? But I guarantee you still probably have customers that are lean in their shop, but they haven't done it through engineering where it's they literally will draw the whole project in one drawing file as opposed to breaking up. And this goes back to, the way technology has evolved, but we haven't evolved our processes with it, with CAD technology and the ability to break up a project by room or by work order into its own drawing file. And I know there's career drafters and engineers that are screaming at me right now, like, well, how can you do that? But this is how you structure your processes to allow a team of drafters to be capable of helping and working together on a project. So I can divide up that scope and say, drafter 1, you're going to do all the exam rooms. Drafter 2, you're going to do the common areas. Drafter 3, you're going to do the reception areas, right? And they're segregated in a way that the work is organized, and I can separate the files and the structure of the project, how we want to build it, how we want to submit it, and in a much more organized way that allows everything to flow more in a lean way. And that usually is the second piece we start helping our clients with is like, okay, let's now change your tools, your CAD template, the way you organize your jobs up front. Let's organize it from the start in a process that supports this new workflow we're trying to implement.
I've never had the opportunity to talk to an actual drafting professional, but when we were doing millwork, one of the big challenges for us was we would submit this drawing package to architects this thick. They would have it forever, and then they'd send it back, and I swear they went through 15 red markers, just, and it would be the same detail, and they would circle it on every single drawing. Like it seemed so crazy. And so we wanted to go to a more of a single piece flow thing. And so what we did, and we could only convince one architect this, but it's because, lean thinking is not for everybody. But we told them, I'm going to draw one room and I'm going to send it to you. You're going to redline it and send it back. And then we're going to make those changes and we're going to draw another room and we're going to send it to you. And until it comes back with no red lines, we're not going to draw the rest of the job. And it only took 2 or 3 iterations and boom, it was the fastest process for everybody. And that, nobody does it. And architects are like, no, just send it to me all at once. I'm like, guys, that's the worst way to do it.
It's tough. And, that's definitely, something I always recommend to my clients, especially if the project manager or whoever is dealing with the customer is, try to negotiate that up front. A lot of times this is, the first thing that happens is your sales team kind of awards a project, dumps it over on operations, and project managers kind of now unraveling, okay, how can I kind of fix this the way we want to run it, right? And one of the first things is, okay, we're starting with submittals. That's usually the first thing they want. Let's set up a phased submittal plan, especially on larger projects, to get them what they need. So some GCs, they maybe are at a stage with new construction where they're saying, hey, I really just need blocking information. But the architect wants, they have to approve submittals for all the trades. And so that's the thing that I think is important is put yourself in the shoes of your client and put yourself in the shoes of the viewers. Okay, well, what does their process look like? And obviously all of us in the trades, we love to hate on architects, right? But if you take a step back and look at, okay, what are they doing? And they are generally, what you're actually dealing with on those larger projects is, probably a project engineer on the GC side and maybe an intern or somebody else at the architect side that is just trying to check off a list. Hey, did I get all the trades submittals approved? And if you're telling them, hey, I want to send you one room at a time, they're going to be like, oh, I don't have time for that, right? But if you can explain to them, well, first of all, if I submit this area to you, I'm going to minimize revisions and I'm going to get you the area that you need first. So your schedule is going to be reduced, right? And tell that to the GC, generally who your customer is. Hey, look, let me get you this area first. If I get this reviewed and approved, I'm going to be able to incorporate those details and not have to make corrections as many times. And it's probably not going to be just one room, but you can get a typical area. Like, hey, if I've got exam rooms, let me give you a typical exam room with a schedule of all the exam rooms and say, hey, there's lefts and rights, but they all have this makeup and here's where they all are. But I've got one set of drawings, one elevation, one plan, one set of typical details that we can review and approve. And I'll take it a step further. If you can even get that your client to agree to a page turn, hey, I'm going to send these to you, and then we're going to schedule a call. We're going to go through them together, and we're going to get off that call with approved as noted, meaning that I know and I understand your red lines, and I can take that back and run with it and not have to resubmit and take your time up again reviewing it. So
Brilliant.
It's very easy for mill workers to get in this, just send emails, follow the process, submit to Procore, and wait. But if you can communicate with your client and let them know, hey, look, we're the professionals at what we do, which is millwork. Here's the process we figured out that's going to get you to the best result as fast as possible. They're willing to work with you on that. And I think that's really the key that you're trying to tell them is like, look, we're trying to get this job done on time and under budget for you. And this is the best path to do that.
Right. And so as soon as I hear about, I'm excited when I hear about you. And as soon as I talk to you, I was like, stop talking. We've got to do a podcast. So I was, because I genuinely this whole podcast, everything we do is just designed truly around helping people. And I really honestly believe that, you do that. You do that to the core. But how can we get rid of, there's an inherent fear, oh man, you're going to do all those drawings. I'm just going to have to redo them again myself. How do you draw stuff the way that I want them drawn? And can those drawings then be passed on to my production team? Can you guys program my CNC as well? Where do you step in, step out, and then take that fear away? How do I know that your stuff's going to be as good as my stuff? Even though I'm talking to you, I already think you're probably better at it than I ever was.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that is, that's one of the first, questions we have for every client, which is totally expectable, right? Understandable. And most clients have tried outsourcing in the past, whether it's, hey, I've hired somebody that's freelance and they're remote, they're nearby, or one of the other, companies that are out there already. And outsourcing has a bad reputation, and specifically within millwork drafting for that reason. Right. And, that is really what I set out to create this team for. And we're not perfect, I'll tell you that. But there is a learning curve with every client that you have to go through. And part of that's just inherent to our industry. And one of the things that I'm working to make an impact on is that every shop does things different. And generally, if you look at the way our industry has evolved, we've been building in manufacturing cabinetry, millwork, woodworking for centuries, right? And we've had many, many decades of experience on building, on selling, on estimating. But the way we do CAD in engineering and the design side is really modernized in the last 15 to 20 years. And so most every shop that's listening right now, you have an engineer that uses CAD or Microvell or CAD Vision or whatever software it is, right? That programs your CNCs. They probably, somebody in that team was the first one in your company that did that. Meaning they were there when you bought the first CNC. They were there when you bought the first license of that the CNC programming software, and they learned and you developed how you engineer today with the evolution of that person's career or that team of people's careers. So why that's important is that we're just now getting to that second generation for most people of having to figure out, how do we train somebody to be a drafter first? How do we train somebody to be an engineer first? How do we teach people how we in our company do this? And most every company still struggles with that because it's like, well, I don't know. I just know that I give it to Jim and I know that he's a safe set of hands, but I don't trust anybody else. And Jim is not a good teacher. Jim is frankly not a good talker. He is a genius and he's a savant at what he does and he's a safe set of hands. But if I bring in somebody young or somebody new or somebody green and sit them next down to him, they're going to chew them up and spit them out. And almost every company has a Jim. And so the biggest struggle owners have is, okay, how do I succession plan for that? And how do I create a repeatable process? And so that's what we're trying to do. And we have to extract from all of our clients, what are your standards? And what are some ways that we can make decisions without having to ask Jim every single time, hey, do you want a filler here? Hey, did we scribe this? And can those things be logical instead of emotional or instead of case by case? That's the hardest part we have with clients. And if you are a company that you can't define for me in a set of standards that says, hey, we do 4-inch nailers, we do 4-inch stretchers, we dowel on this spacing, and ideally we have it built into our parametric software to where the only questions we're having to ask are the unique stuff. Like, hey, we've got this custom reception desk. Do you want to do 3 centimeter or 2 centimeter? Do you want to miter fold it, right? But if I'm having to ask the same questions over and over again and we're having to go to Jim, then the problem isn't can we match your standards? It's that you don't have standards. And so that's the first step is, can we document, can we understand your standards? Can we understand how you make decisions? And then we can repeat that. And then let's focus on in the kickoff meeting, hey, this is the unique thing for this project. Let's decide up front how you want to detail it. We know how you build cabinets. We know how you build wall panels. We know how you do die walls. We've got that figured out. We've got that in our standards for you. Let's focus on the really custom stuff. And so that's the first way I answer that. Beyond that, obviously, we have a lot of infrastructure. This is all we do all day, every day. So I mentioned, we have over 70 people now. We've scaled over the last 3 years from about 20 to 70 people. And that doesn't happen easily to be able to have all those people working on client work. So first, we have a dedicated quality control team that they review every single submittal before it goes to a client. And they review it multiple times. And what they're reviewing for is a specific checklist of criteria. So included in that is, hey, do we have a client standards document? And do these drawings comply and match this client's standards? Okay. How do they dimension? How do they mark, verify, and field dimensions? Do they dimension this type of dimension on the elevation or plan or both or just the section? What information goes in their title block? All of that we document, and then we review it against including things like spell check, including things like, hey, is the section call out referring to the right detail? Like the minor stuff that most people miss because you're focusing on the detailed stuff that your vision goes blurry. So we put infrastructure in place for that. And then we're, as you mentioned, like you try to do with your clients, we try to do with ours, which is let's do progress sets. So we're going to meet and have a kickoff. You're going to have a meeting. If you work with us, we're going to assign you a team lead who is your point of contact. You're going to get on a video call like this, and they speak English. They speak with you directly every day and progress update, and you're going to have a call with them as many times as it needs to complete that project. So we put you in contact directly with the people drawing your job. which is one of the first points of communication breakdown. Is usually you're relaying through somebody else to try to get that information right and translate to another language and all these things, right? All of our people are fluent in English. They're Eastern time zone. They work on the hours you work so that they can jump on a call and they can communicate real time about your project. And then beyond that is, like I said, the quality control processes we have. So there are clients that we're just not a good fit for. And generally what that comes down to is they can't define for us standards to where we can make decisions without having to go through them for every single detail.
Now, call me crazy, but that customer in particular would be better off to send all of their work to you because you have the standards. Like, you know the saying, no standards, no Kaizen, baby. So, I mean, if you can't define all of that for yourself, man, I would just hire you and be like, you tell me what the standards are going forward. And off we go. Like, one of the things that we notice on the lean side all the time is engineering is a huge bottleneck. Agreed. Closely followed by finishing, but engineering is first. And, you know, there's a saying in the lean world, which is quality at the source. So if you follow the source far enough, you're going to land on an engineer's desk. Mm-hmm. And that guy, often they're not taught that their only job as an engineer is to make the life of the Gemba people easy. So that's it. Like, there's no saying no. If they're like, oh, I need the drawings to look like this because it helps us on the shop floor. And they're often like, oh man, like, figure it out or whatever, because they're so busy trying to do all the things that you're talking about, trying to get these submittals and all of this stuff. But the quality at the source, if they realize, like, if I just hired more engineers, the speed of my shop would probably triple, because I always say where the thinking starts, the profit stops. So are they on the shop floor with a set of drawings trying to calculate things? Are the drawings clear? You know, and if you have one or two, or it doesn't matter if you have 10, if they're overburdened engineers, then your shop pays the price. And I'm listening to you and I'm like ready to do millwork again. I'm like, this is like, I mean, this is amazing. Like, I could ramp up with a huge job, have you guys put it all through for me, and it doesn't take my in-house guys any time. They can stay focused on making the Gemba people's job easier. They're not stressed out. They're going home at 5 o'clock. They're enjoying time with their family. Like, God, oh my God, it's not a sales pitch, but I want to hire you. But
yeah. And I mean, I think, you know, to go a little further, you know, like you said, that is the key. You know, when I was managing an engineering team of engineers that we were in the shop, I would constantly tell them, hey, go out on the shop floor, especially if you have work orders out there, go out there and follow it through. Take every break, every lunch, whatever, walk through. And, you know, it's hard to get engineers. They're the personality type generally, you know, they're non-confrontational. They don't want to go out there. Right. But that is that's how I learned everything. Right. You know, I did my time on the shop floor. I did woodworking. I did, you know, I ran all the machines, but I have more knowledge that I've learned after that as an engineer by going out and getting feedback from the guys on the shop floor. And especially if you've moved from shop to shop, every shop is different. And every department is a little bit different. And so, you know, I would walk the flow of the parts. So I would go start at one end of the shop at the beam saws, right? And I would look and see, okay, I see this work order that I released that last week. I see they're cutting it. Let me talk to the saw operator, say, everything good? Is there anything that we could do better? Yeah, this is good, but I had a question about this. I actually made a change to your optimization. I was able to get a better yield. Oh, great. Noted. That's something that we could easily manually change, or I could change something here because of something we didn't think about. Great. And that's the things that I think most engineers struggle with, is their immediate instinct and reaction to that type of feedback is, well, it wasn't wrong the way it was. You should have just cut my program, as opposed to, okay, if you're going to change it anyway, how can I avoid you taking the time to make that change? Mm-hmm. It's not about being right or wrong. It's, you know, the fastest, the best way to do something in engineering is the way the shop is going to do it. And so what I mean by that is if I'm engineering and taking time to design something in a way that people aren't going to use my programs or people aren't going to build it the way I drew it, I wasted time. I wasted efforts making something that didn't get done. And so it's actually more efficient if I took the time up front to design it the way they were going to do it. And they actually follow my process to where what I'm engineering is used. And so I would follow it there from the edge bander, and I would ask the edge banding guys, hey, did everything come out right? Did our pre-mill setting match what you needed? Did we order the right stuff? Because my engineers would do takeoffs, follow it down to the case clamp and all that type of stuff, right? I got so much that I learned from that just daily walk as an engineer because I was getting feedback from them. The other thing that it does is I now have a face and a name. It's not just, okay, I got my report printed. I got my programs for Beamsaw. It was no, I got my optimization for Jose. I got my edge banding report for Jane. I got my assembly report for Joe. It was a name, and it mattered to me because I didn't want to let those people down. They knew my name is on the engineer report going out. My name's on this work order. My goal as an engineer was always, I want everybody in that shop to be happy when they see my name on a work order that comes out them. And I want them to know that, okay, I trust that what Jacob's doing, and also know that, hey, last time I gave him feedback, he incorporated it and he made my job easier. I'm going to keep giving him feedback because that's what I want. I want them wanting to talk to me. Where things break down is when the shop says, I'm not even going to bother talking to Jacob. I'm just going to fix it myself.
Us he doesn't and them,
Yes. And the same goes for when we're working with clients with drafting. Is if we're sending you that first project and your engineer looks at it and says, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, let's never hire them again. I'm not going to give them feedback. It's never going to work. We're going to make mistakes. Just like if you hire a drafter internally and you train them, they're going to make mistakes. We have to get through that process and we have to get that feedback loop going so that we can get it right the next time and the next time. And if you can't give us that feedback, we can't get it right and we can't learn. That is key for just you internally, and that's key for us to be able to work together as a partner. Is we have to be mutually invested in our mutual success. And so you have to be willing to say, okay, we're going to review, we're going to find the mistake, and then we're going to give the feedback, and we're going to give a chance to get it right. Now it's our job to fix that and not make those mistakes again, right? But it's our client's job to give us that feedback. And I think that just goes for any relationship you've got.
Oh, for sure. Now, we talk about engineers often being overburdened individuals, and I'm sure as soon as we use that word, they're all sitting there like nodding their heads like, oh my God, yes. How do you know when, like, at what point an engineer becomes overburdened? Is there a number like, hey, one guy can draw $1 million worth of stuff a month? Or is there, do you have any metrics on that people could loosely apply to try and understand if they're killing their people?
So there are some metrics. There's one, AWI does a cost of doing business survey. So on the commercial side, there's some data there that if you reach out to, there's over 100 member companies that they fill out financial data that says what they spend. And I always tracked that for myself. And it's really unique per client because where it gets hard is every company kind of measures, as you said before, maybe we do a lot of stone work and that's in our revenue number. You kind of need to break that down, but that goes through drafting and engineering, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't necessarily go through your plant produced revenue. So, it can vary by engineer anywhere between, I don't know, 4 and 5 million a year on a large commercial shop. But what I like to do is break that down into hours. And so, almost every shop still does this. Their estimator will estimate a job and they'll say, well, 2% of gross revenue, that's my engineering budget.
Gotcha.
That doesn't work. It just doesn't, because revenue dollar is not the same for stone as it is for high-end veneers, as it is for casework, right? So the first thing I always did was I would take the estimates engineering budget, throw it out the window, and I would re-estimate how many days is this going to take my team. And I would build in a waste factor. So if my engineer works 8 hours a day, he's not getting 8 hours of productivity engineering done a day. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 7, whatever that is. Define that for yourself and start tracking that. And so, and you're very quickly going to figure those numbers out for you. What's accurate for the type of work you guys do. And I think just like what you do with Kaizenify, I think it's very key for people to track that data within engineering to be able to know, okay, here's both revenue and hours that it came in, because you do know, okay, within, if my guy spends 2 weeks doing shop drawings for the stone vendor, he's not spending any of that time sending work to your shop. But if you can look at the job and break down and track, okay, well, he released a work order that had this many saw hours in it, this many labor hours, and this many shop hours. And I think those are more valuable to track, is one, how many engineering hours it takes. And I think just starting, if you don't have a good starting place, is to estimate in days and build in a margin of error. I like that. I think that's key, that you develop that for yourself and you start to track it. But I would say a cost of doing business survey is a very good starting point if you don't know where to start, of what peers in this industry are spending. And it gives you labor as well as a breakdown of everybody's P&L.
Right. And this ties in really neatly to what we are constantly preaching on the lean side. Is you touched on it. I just want to make sure people listening got it, that we need to be calculating what we call throughput dollars. And a throughput dollar is sales minus material equals throughput dollar. Because to your point, if we do a job with stone countertops or a job with laminate countertops, the work for our shop is still to build 3 cabinets underneath it, but the price will be radically different. So we need to get that material out. And if you are taking the proper metrics, if you're using Kaizenify or however you're doing it, make sure you're doing those throughput numbers. You're already gathering that data. So now all you have to do is say, oh, there's my throughput dollar. How long did it take my engineer in days to draw that? You track that for a month, and you're going to have a really good idea of how many throughput dollars an engineer can draw per day, per week, per month. So, wow, that's really good. I wonder if we can...
I would imagine that you can easily add that to your Kaizenify app, right?
I was just thinking
that. Add engineering as a department and just track that. Like, how many throughput dollars did he... And I would track at least 2 milestones: is submitted to the client and released to production, as 2 different things, or 2 different stages in it, right? But I think that would be huge. And if you're already tracking that, like Brad's recommending with Kaizenify, track the same thing, but just through the engineering process.
Huge. Now, what if I have a small millwork shop and I'm looking to hire an internal engineer? So you have lots of experience of hiring engineers. What do you look for? Like, what do you prefer? Like, would you prefer a kid with a smile, doesn't know anything, and you're going to teach them everything? Or do you want someone with that specific experience? Like, how do you go about vetting people for that job?
Yeah. So, I think this is dependent on what you have currently. And what I mean by that is, okay, maybe you already have a tenured engineer who is nearing retirement, and you're looking for, how do I start bringing somebody in that can train under them? And so, what matters is, one, do I have anybody that, if I hire somebody new and green that is trainable, do I have somebody to train them? Do I have somebody that they can learn from, that they can shadow? And 2, is that person somebody that's willing to teach them? And so many shops have that person, but they have burned through people because of that person. And that person knows, but they're not a good teacher. And that doesn't mean that person's a bad person, but it's a very different thing to be good at doing than it is to be good at teaching how to do. And so I think that's key, to be honest with yourself and evaluate, what does my current team look like? And so either way, you need to be able to think for the future. If you're an owner and you're staring down, hey, my engineer is 5 years from retirement, or as many are, he's already come back from retirement as a favor to me twice, and I still haven't replaced him. How do I
I,
solve this? And so
I hear all of these stories. You're like, I mean, I'm just like, wow, yeah, I know someone who's done that. Like,
yeah, it
that's
happens so
crazy.
much. And so it's funny because most millwork companies are owned by somebody that is crafts. So there's two types of breeds, I say, but the majority tend to be craftsmen first. And they were somebody that started the shop. They were the guys, running the saw. They've grown this business, but they were a craftsman first, and they've become an entrepreneur out of necessity, right?
Yeah.
This building kind of just grew under them, and they've developed it, and they don't have a succession plan. But those type of people, right? A lot of times they have never run CAD themselves. They have had a shop since before CAD was a necessity, since before CNCs, but they've adopted it, and they've had that person that used to work on the shop floor, and then they were the one running the CNC when they bought it. They were the one who implemented the CAM software when they bought it, and they've always had that safe set of hands. But the owner, they know how to build everything without that. They know how to sell everything without that. They know how to estimate everything. And so many owners I talk to, they really understand at their core every part of the business except for engineering. And engineering is not just a bottleneck as far as capacity, but it is a mental block for so many owners for that reason, because they say, I've had so many owners sit there and say, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I did all this by myself without that. Why am I struggling to get the same output or ratio based on, like, I'm spending so much money and all I hear is problems, 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 problems. And so that is a very core struggle. Is what I say I've made my career as an engineer was I understood very early on, okay, I made a conscious decision I was going to make a career in this industry. Like, I went to school for architecture. I chose woodworking. And I understood very early on, okay, I understand engineering, and I learned, hey, I need to speak my boss's language. They're not talking about shop drawing quality. They're talking about shipped products and revenue and the next project. And I had to figure out, how do I translate engineering problems into how does my job serve the needs of the business, and what are the needs of the business? And too many drafters and engineers get stuck in, well, my job is to make the best shop drawings or to make the best optimization or the best program, and I don't care how many hours it takes. They're going to wait until I get this done. And that's not what you're in business doing. You're not in business making CNC programs and pretty shop drawings. You're in business shipping delivered completed products. So you have to understand, in a lean mindset, hey, is this value add effort, or is this just taking time and costing money that is not adding value? And how can I eliminate any non-value add efforts from the engineering process? And so who is my customer as an engineer? And it's a lot of times twofold. It's the customer who's approving your drawings. So how do I make that process as efficient as possible to get what I need from them? I don't need them to know all the details at the submittal stage of everything. I need them to know just enough to sign off and approve on what we're going to give them. So that's kind of the first thing that most people get wrong, is they think, well, what we draw needs to have this miterfold detail exactly right, even though it's going to be completely concealed in the final product. Nobody's ever going to see that. And so they don't care, is your dowel spacing 32 millimeters or 44 millimeters. Obviously, you want to get that right and have that programmed in. But a lot of times the engineer focuses on the things that doesn't matter at that stage.
Right.
So can we streamline that process up front to get just what we need just in time?
Can you take, like, do you guys take it all the way to cut lists, or do you step in and step out? Like, what's your scope?
So we do have a limited capacity of team that can do fully to cut lists, particularly for microbiome clients. So we do have a handful of engineers that are able to do that full process. Where we are most try to start helping, like I said, is doing the drafting and then reallocating your internal resources towards production. And then if you need extra capacity in production, we do have some capacity to do that. I have, actually a US based engineer who, he worked for me for many years. We worked together, and he can do anything from, analyzing a custom curved drywall, wall panels, helping you get out to your shop floor. The reason we don't do that across the board, and we do that as a limited amount, is, like I said, every shop is different. And so it's not just, well, if we're doing the shop drawings and we're detailing up front how you're going to build something, engineering and programming for your machines is kind of exponentially more complex to understand. Okay, I need to send code to this CNC, but then to this saw, then to this, right? And your tool numbers are different. Like there is a level of complexity, and down to, I got to make sure I print the PDFs of these reports for this department and these reports for this department. We get there with some clients, and we do have the capacity to do that, but it's very limited. And generally, the way we're able to add the most value is how can we come alongside you? And like I said, first divide the engineering process into the two workflows that really it is, and let us relieve capacity up front to where you can focus on keeping your shop flow fed. And then once we get over that hurdle, it's okay, how do we become a part of a long-term relationship where it's maybe you need consistent capacity? We do have a dedicated option where we can give you a full-time resource that's permanently assigned to you. So we have clients that have as many as 8 drafters that are full-time working for them.
Wow.
But the first thing we want to do is we want to relieve the capacity to where we have space to architect the right plan for you. Whether you need just periodic overflow capacity or consistent resources or a mixture of both. It's a lot easier once we've engaged and we've documented your standards and we've got kind of a way of working together to help you. And that's usually where it starts is, hey, let's relieve the immediate needs, allow you to reallocate your resources, and then let's put together a plan, which is, do you need somebody outputting to your shop permanently? Let's match you with somebody that has the skills closest and then work together to train them to meet your needs. And then what is your long-term plan? Are you planning on growing next year? Okay, let's work backwards to, is that 1 more drafter, 2 more drafters? We then can match your capacity needs to the skills that we have and plan alongside you.
Man, one of our biggest principles, in even within our group of companies is we want to solve a problem. That's, if you're not solving a problem, then you're just in the minutia with everybody else and probably just racing for a price thing. And I really feel like you guys have solved a problem. Like you really, like when I think of being able to ramp up and ramp down my engineering department, oh my God. So you're telling me I could have 1 full-time engineer and you guys can do the capacity above, and then when the work goes away, I don't have to pay you anymore and I can just keep my one guy busy. I mean, this to me is radical. So good for you in seeing an industry. I knew the first time we talked, it was like, okay, this guy gets it. Like you're out in the Gemba with the people, you weren't just, the white glove engineer who never leaves the office and has an opinion on everything, but never actually built a cabinet. So I really think that you did it right. So congratulations on that. Now we got to get going because people have been listening to us ramble on for 40 some odd minutes now. But last question, where'd the name come from?
It's a kind of a 2-part story. Growing up, my grandmother always collected ducks. She had all these tchotchkes of ducks. I remember going to her house constantly, and she had tables full of brass ducks and ceramic ducks and all these things. That always stuck with me. And then many, many years later, probably about 6 or 8 years ago, I had a blog post. I had my own blog where I would write about engineering and software and stuff. And I wrote one about an acronym, Be a Duck. Be diligent, be urgent, be consistent, be knowledgeable. And I remember some of my engineers, they found that and that stuck with them. Obviously, it was a joke. They made fun of it. But when I had to create a company, I had to pick a name, I was like, oh, that one, I really do try to make those my core values. Is I always want to be diligent. I want to work with urgency. I want to have consistency, and I want to be knowledgeable. And so, when you're naming any company, there's always that exercise you go through. It's like, what website's available, all this stuff. Right. And I reached out to a good friend of mine who does marketing, and I'd asked him, hey, what do you think about Duck Millwork Consulting? He was like, I think you need another syllable there. You need another word. It looks better with an extra word there. He's like, make it duckworks. And I was like, all right, putting that on the paperwork and sending that to the state, and the rest is history.
Man, good for you. That's so cool. I'm glad I asked because
Yeah.
that's a really good acronym. Cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now if people wanted to get a hold of you or reach out to you or ask some advice or get your opinion, how do they find you? Where do they find you?
Yeah. So you can obviously Google us, Duckworks Millwork. Our website is duckworksmw.com. And you can obviously find all of our social media, all of our posts, all of our content on there. You can fill out a contact form or email me directly from there. So if you want to request a quote for a job, there's a way to send us files right from there, or just send us an email. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can shoot me a direct message, Jacob Edmond on LinkedIn. And I would love to connect and schedule an intro call, which again, you can do that from our website as well. You can book time with me to get introduced and ask me a bunch more questions and find out how we can help you. So we're constantly putting out content. And so if you go to our YouTube or our Instagram or LinkedIn, you'll see blog posts about everything we've talked about today, our process, how we can help you, and different tips and tricks about drafting and engineering as well. So I would love to connect. And if you do happen to be at any of the trade shows, I usually try to frequent those and get out and meet people. So the AWI conferences, the Wood Industry Conference, AWF, all those, you might see me around there as well.
Well, there you go. You sound like an easy guy to find. Really appreciate you making the time for us today. I know that all of our mill workers listening, whether they don't need you today or tomorrow, probably the day after, sooner or later, they're going to remember, hey, I can get Jacob to give me a hand on this. So thanks for making the time today. It was really cool chatting with you. And, best of luck going forward for you and your team. And I have this sneaking suspicion I'm going to hear your name come up in our circle of clients very soon. So
Yeah,
thanks again.
absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Brad. I appreciate all the work you do and the content you produce. And I love following all your adventures and stuff as well. So thanks for having me on, and look forward to staying in touch.
All right. Well, everybody, there's another episode of On the Shop Floor in the bag. Thank you, Jacob Edmond, for joining us today. And we'll see you next time on the shop floor.